What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of The Game Plan. Folks, we are in our dress rehearsal, so to speak. This time next week, we will have seen not one, but two NFL football games that actually count. We will be getting ready for the true week one matchups. All of these off-season studies and all of these mocks, all of these drafts, all of these things will finally mean something. We'll have NFL football, folks, and I got to say, your boy's very, very excited. I also want to give a big shout out to everyone out there, in those seasonal league streets, because this is our weekend. This is the biggest seasonal draft weekend of the year. So if you had your draft yesterday, today's episode is perfect for you. And if you haven't had it yet, well, this episode's still going to be perfect for you because we are talking about 10 stashes that you should have on your roster on the back end of your bench in seasonal formats. These are players that are not being selected in most seasonal drafts. These are the players that are, just they have low ownership percentages right now. They haven't been drafted, and these are the guys you can pick up for nothing before it gets too expensive. Put them on your bench, let them marinate, and then boom, you'll have them when you need them most, when we're in the thick of things in the fantasy season. So we have 10 stashes for fantasy football. And boys, girls, everybody, I'm excited. It's draft weekend. I'm also extremely excited because today is actually my home league draft, the Golden Pony Fantasy Football Experience. That league drafts today. So we're going to be with the boys soon. Going to go golfing to get the morning going. And then we're going to go ahead and get the draft going later on today. It's truly the most wonderful time of the year. Matter of fact, I was talking to my kids yesterday, and they were asking me about Sunday. They talk about, what are we doing Sunday? What are we doing? I was like, well, it's Daddy's Christmas, so Dad's not going to be around on Sunday. And they were like, huh? Christmas? What do you mean Christmas? So it's Daddy's Christmas. This is truly the most wonderful time of the year for your boy and for a lot of us that are doing these drafts here. So we got a few news and notes to go through. Nothing too much. Some serious stuff, but not a whole lot in terms of volume. And then we got our 10 stashes. So let's get it crack-a-lackin'. See some people in the chat. Shout out DP Dynasty Berry Fizzle Dollars. What's going on? I'm pretty sure this is Mike. Mike is finally awake. Shout out to you, McNutted. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in to the morning show. Like I said, this is the last time we're going to be talking without NFL football stats to look out, NFL games to look forward to. So the news and notes, we'll breeze through them pretty quickly here. Of course, the two wide receivers, Brandon Ayuk, CeeDee Lamb, both got their extensions. Both will take probably, I would say, a week to shake off some rust, but they're in the primes of their careers. It's not going to take long for them. And even with Brandon Ayuk having the Monday night game, he might have just that extra day, might make a world of difference. And CeeDee Lamb, you're drafting him in the first round. You're drafting one of the top picks, and you are playing him right out of the gate. So we're excited to see that. There was obviously a ton of cuts that happened. I'm not going to dive into a lot of those because they weren't really super seasonal format relevant, mostly Dynasty. How did our fourth and fifth round rookie picks, did they make the roster? Did they do this? Those were most of the players that were truly affected. There wasn't a lot newsworthy for our seasonal drafts in terms of the cuts. But also the last bit of news I'm going to tap in is I just want to give my thoughts, my prayers, my positive vibes to Ricky Pearsall. He was shot in the chest in California for an attempted robbery by a 17-year-old kid. It's really sad on so many different levels. But the Niners, they released a press release, and they said he is in stable but serious condition. So I just want to take a second to just give out some thoughts and prayers for Ricky Pearsall, his family, his friends, his teammates, everyone that's obviously not having a good morning this morning, having to deal with such scary news. But it seems like he will be good. He will make a recovery. I would assume being shot in the chest means you're out for the fantasy season. But you don't really have to worry too much about fantasy. We're talking about a kid's life, about to, enter his dream job, rookie season for the NFL, being wide receiver for the 49ers. But yeah, it seems like he'll make it out okay. He seems like he'll make a recovery. So thoughts and prayers, Ricky Pearsall. So we're very, very happy to see that he is on the road to recovery. It's going to be a long road, it feels like. But again, just want to send out thoughts and prayers to him and his family, his friends, his teammates, everybody that's going on. Yeah, if there's a CD Lamb, baby. And I also, this because you were in Canton when I bought it, that CD Lamb jersey, that's going to be on my back when we draft later today, because I got CD Lamb in that league and I ain't never giving him up. Go Rings. It's good to see you here, man. Good morning. Good. Overwatch. Yeah, see, it's awful. It's just Overwatch. The poor kid gets shot in the chest. So it's terrible. Brian Robinson got shot around. Yes, it's crazy. We have now seen Brian Robinson, Tank Dell, Ricky Pearsall. It's like it's becoming a thing, and I hope it doesn't. I hope it ends here. I hope this doesn't happen again. It's just crazy. But again, let's get back to the fantasy stuff. We're here for the game plan. You guys did not wake up in the morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, at the ass crack of the dizzy to talk about all the news and notes, to talk about all the craziness in the world. We're here to talk about 10 stashes. So let's get into the first guy, Dylan Laube, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, why is he a stash? Well, we'll kind of talk about their situations, what I like about the players, and why they're worth the stat, and put all those together of why they're worth stashing in our seasonal formats. Well, Dylan Laube, okay, he was drafted late this year in the 6th round, but he's proven to be pretty athletic. He's got the right size, 5'10", 206 pounds. He's above average in all of his athletic measurables, and the dude is a demon in the passing game. If you've tapped in to any of my content, then you've heard me singing this kid's praises before, and I just won't stop. He made the team, which there was some doubt for what felt like a second, but I mean, they let this kid rock 23 from jump. Come on, dude. You're not giving out 2-3 Jordan, MJ to just some guy that you're going to cut in a couple days. We should expect Dylan Laube to start the season as the RB3, but he's going to be on the special teams, and he is truly the only back on this team that is a dangerous weapon as a pass catcher. So there will be a small role for him early. And then, of course, if there's an injury to Zamir White, if Alexander Madison just gets pushed aside, then all of a sudden these guys, Dylan Laube's opportunities are going to rack up. And the thing about Laube, so this is in our PPR formats. The thing about Laube is he may not seem like he's really getting a whole lot in terms of volume, in terms of opportunities. But if you look at a box score and you see 4 for 40, you see 3 for 50, you see even say 3 for 25, because you tap into South Harmon, fantasy, you're dialed in, that this is the road to success for a player like this. The second he starts seeing 2, 3, maybe 4 targets in a game, that is that snowball that can roll down the hill, become an absolute behemoth, and you don't have to overpay in fab. So you stash them on your bench, you throw them on your bench. In seasonal drafts, I highly preach stashing a lot of running backs. So we'll see. We'll talk about a handful of running backs here today. The first guy, Dylan Laube, rookie wide running back from the Las Vegas Raiders. Make sure you stash him, put him on your bench. If he's available, go pick him up for nothing now, and you will not regret it later. The next player I'm going to talk about is a second-year wide receiver, Andrei Iosvias. I think I said that right. Iosvias. Andrei Iosvias. I used to say Iosvias. It was terrible. But anyway, Iosvias, again, a late-round pick for the Bengals last year in 2023. But, coming out of Princeton, this kid's kind of an athletic freak. 6'3", 205 pounds, 4.43 speed, tremendous speed scores, really good burst, agility, great catch radius. And he's seemingly won the wide receiver 3 job. Now, Jermaine Burton is there. And if you prefer Burton, you could stash him over Iosvias. But the reason why I'm going Andrei Iosvias as my stash guy here is he's kind of flashed at the NFL. Like, not anything serious. Obviously, he hasn't had the playing time, but and uber limited playing time, not seeing a whole lot of targets last year. He only saw 25 total targets for a whopping 4.5 target share. But in that season where he didn't get any looks, he had 4 receiving touchdowns. He saw red zone opportunities. And in week 18 last year, I know it doesn't matter for fantasy, but 7 targets, 5 catches, 2 touchdowns, 20.6 fantasy points. He seems to flash, and he's looked good in camp. The reports coming from Cincinnati is that he does have a rapport with Joe Burrow. And there's a chance that if T. Higgins gets hurt, if Jamar Chase holds out all year and his role is elevated, then Iosvias is going to be on the field. And what makes him different than Jermaine Burton is going to win in the inside, being a slot guy, and he's going to be good there. And I think he will settle in as that Tyler Boyd player for them in the long term. But Iosvias brings a level of compete on the outside with the size, the go get it, the speed. That's going to allow this team to put Chase in the slot, which is what they want to do. They want to put Chase in that slot plus role that has been so lucrative and so awesome for so many players at the position. So Iosvias will give them that chance on the outside. And even if Burton, again, gets to receive 7 GOAT rings, if Burton does get that job sooner rather than later, it's probably going to be more in the slot. And if he gets that job the way we're thinking it, it's really going to be more so due to injury, which would mean then Iosvias then climbs the ladder as well. That's why I think Iosvias is a nice stash there at the end of the bench, someone you can pick up now, someone that you can kind of wait on, not necessarily need. And then if things go south or if you don't want to use them, you can cut bait. Because again, these are stashed players. These are not players that, require a whole lot of draft capital, don't require a whole lot of investment in our seasonal drafts and all that nature. So Iosvias is my number 2 stash player coming out of our seasonal drafts. The third player and the only quarterback on today's list, Drake Maye. So Drake Maye did not win the starting job, which is why he's a stash. But the thought around NFL circles is that he will make his way onto the field at some point this season. And we've seen him develop rather quickly in this offseason. His struggles were kind of highlighted earlier in the training camp, and then we saw the progression, and it really kind of cascaded and kind of crescendoed into that third preseason game. We saw him, break away a long run. We saw his athleticism. We saw the arm. And if he does hit the field, this is the perfect quarterback that if you don't go high-end quarterback, you don't invest a lot in quarterback, you wait and want to take a chance on someone late, or if you go the kind of less than exciting guys, your Brock Purdy's, your Jared Goff's, your pocket passer types, Drake Maye can be that stash on your bench that once he's given the opportunity, once he comes in, now we're talking about a player that has that Konami code ability, has that chance to score with his legs and with his arm. And we've seen bad teams have quarterbacks that are good for fantasy. So Drake Maye, only quarterback I'm talking about here. Drake Maye is somebody that I'm not stashing any quarterbacks that don't have the ability to run. And we've seen Drake Maye's athletic ability. It's come out in terms of even on the field with, it's second teamers, but speed is speed, quickness is quickness, and the ability to use the legs and win with the legs, that'll translate. So Drake Maye is a guy that I'll absolutely keep on my bench if I have a less than exciting quarterback option here. We got one. Boom, 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 boom. Patriots fan, Boston Cab. You got to have one Pat on here. You got to have a Pat on there. The fourth player we're talking about is another running back, another rookie running back. Rookie running backs are like they're stash material, no doubt about it. Audric Estime. Audric Estime did not really wow in terms of his yards per carry in the preseason, but he did show his ability to put the ball in the end zone. And for Sean Payton, this is the only running back truly that he's kind of drafted. Of course, Julian McLaughlin he brought in, so it's like he has preference there. And Javante's the guy. I've seen enough. I've heard enough. Javante's the running back one. He's the guy that I like. And in terms of a value in our seasonal drafts, he actually does come at a value. But if he is injured, if he doesn't really take advantage of the role, then Audric Estime may find a chance to play. Drafted in the 5th round. He's got the size. He's a mega producer in college. This is a guy that had, absolutely dominated in college. He was a good running back for Notre Dame last year, having 1,300 rushing yards for the Fighting Irish. And again, this is a player that you want on your bench, because if you wait and there is an injury or a benching, all of a sudden you're breaking the bank. And I got some pushback on Twitter about this, but I know it does go for a lot of running backs. But I think of all of these kind of RB3s, we're waiting for something to happen to give him a role type players. Estime's towards the top of my list because he can catch, he can run, he's a good goal line back, he has the size, the shoulder, the load. So in terms of you don't want your stash running backs to be guys that are going to go into committees if something changes. You want guys that can take on a hell of a lot of this team's running back responsibilities if he were to come up in the depth chart. So Audric Estime is a running back for me that is definitely worth a stash in our fantasy leagues. The next player is kind of a shot in the dark player. I'll be completely honest with you. It's just a prospect profile that I just tend to gravitate towards. And that's Roman Wilson, rookie wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, so Brandon Ayuk's not going there, right? We can officially say Brandon Ayuk is not going to Pittsburgh. George Pickens projects to be the number 1 receiver. Not debating that whatsoever, especially because Roman Wilson has been dealing with a foot injury, an ankle injury, most of the training camp. So he is really just kind of fallen off of our radars. But this is a guy that was pretty damn productive for a team that did not throw the ball for Michigan. He had only 48 receptions, only 789 receiving yards for the Wolverines last year, but 12 receiving touchdowns. He had a nose for the end zone. He has a nose to make plays, a good route runner, a poised and polished and mature wide receiver. And they took him in the 3rd round. That's enough investment. That's what they invested in Deontay Johnson. And Deontay Johnson was really good in our PPR leagues for a few years there in Pittsburgh. And as he gets healthy, it's going to take some time. He's being taken outside of the top 200. He's not really being drafted. That's why we stash him. But he is a kind of a player that you can see a little Stephon Diggs in his game. You can see a little Chris Olave in his game. Now, they're, discounted versions, I know. But a guy that was dominant in college, a guy who ran a 4.39, a guy with that type of polished route running is going to play a factor in this Pittsburgh Steelers offense at some point. Will he ever push Pickens aside? Not in year 1, but we don't need him to push him aside. We need him to get healthy. We can, and then if a little bonus here, a little cherry on top of the sundae is if you have an IR spot, if you have a place where you can stash him without really using a roster spot, well then, it's just even that much more wheels up for a guy like Roman Wilson, a player that I know it's a lot of hopes and wishes here when we're talking about Roman Wilson, but I just really like the prospect profile, really like the player, love the landing spot, love the draft capital, and I just don't want to forget about all those things that I liked about him because he was injured. So he's a guy that I'm stashing at the back end of my bench here, coming up for heading into the 2024 season. Let's move on to the next stash. Okay, let me find it here. It's a player that. Again, it's just another one of these running backs that if something happens, all of a sudden he's put into a situation where he can be a fab destroyer, first and foremost, but a fantasy contributor. And that's Eric Gray. Eric Gray flashed in the preseason, both in the rushing game and as a pass catcher in this offense. And when you look at the running back room for the New York Giants, you see Motor Singletary, who will be their running back 1 out of the gate. If you watch Hard Knocks, you understand that Joe Shane and the front office, they believe in the talent of Motor Singletary. They believe in that kid. So he's going to start. And then you have Tyrone Tracy, who projects to be probably the highest ceiling back in this team, the highest ceilinged back on this roster. But Eric Gray, again, flashed in the preseason. We continued to hear the drumbeat praise being said for Eric Gray. And this guy just 1 year removed, when he was at the University of Oklahoma, 1,300 rushing yards, 230 passing receiving yards. He was a good player at Oklahoma. And yeah, I think he went to Oklahoma. Yeah, he went to Oklahoma. I had a brain cramp for a second. But Eric Gray, for me, he's not the sexiest player on this list. He's not the most exciting player on this list. But he is the type of player that, given the opportunity, he's got some burst, he's got some agility, he's got the size. He could be a back that ends up feasting at certain points this season. And these are the type of guys you just want to get ahead of. And you're not going to stash all these guys, right? We know that you're not going to stash all of these players. You only have a certain amount of spots. You only have maybe 1 or 2 spots on your bench to stash. So you could pick your favorites here. You could pick your, depending on your builds, pick a certain position. But these are the 10 most exciting stashes as we head into the 2024 season. The next player in the first tight end I'm going to talk about here, Ja'Tavion Sanders. We've kind of just forgot about Ja'Tavion Sanders, right? We've just kind of threw him aside. He didn't perform well at the combine. He wasn't the second tight end off the board as we expected earlier in the process. And he's just kind of been a steady decline in terms of value. But now that he's a Carolina Panther and they don't have any tight ends on the field, we're starting to hear that he's that tight end that could be, quote, a quarterback's best friend. And will he be out the gate? I would guess not. You've got vets like Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson. Those guys will be the more relied upon targets. But after that, Xavier Legette, has he truly flashed yet? No. Jonathan Mingo, I refuse to believe he'll be a thing. But Ja'Tavion Sanders, if he gets on the field early, and it looks like if you look through the reports, kind of see what's going on down there in Carolina, this guy just keeps making plays. He keeps making plays, and eventually he's going to get on the field. And at 6'4", 245, good speed, not elite speed, but good speed. And then last year, he's just been such a productive tight end in college. Back-to-back 600-yard receiving seasons at Texas. Yak monster, he led the Big 12 last year in Yak. He was top 5 in the nation from the tight end position in yards after catch. He checks a lot of the boxes, and if he becomes the tight end 1 out of the gate, we're going to be looking at a player that's usable in fantasy. And if you don't go tight end, like if you follow the good word of Koopa, the God, when it comes to these analytics, then you play in these non-tight end premium, these 1 QB seasonal format leagues like I do, then you don't invest super heavily in a guy into a tight end. So if you can get Ja'Tavion Sanders now for $3.99, put him on your bench, you can have a guy that ends up being a weekly starter. Like in one league I just drafted last night, I got Pat Frymuth. Well, in terms of Pat Frymuth, I am absolutely not married to Pat Frymuth. I can't say that it's going to be Pat Frymuth all day, every day. I'm going to get a guy like Ja'Tavion Sanders and play the hot hand throughout the season. So that is why I'm stashing Ja'Tavion Sanders. The next player I'm going to talk about is Jalen Tolbert for the Cowboys. He's going to his 3rd year, but there's just kind of there's a bit of a lull in the hierarchy in Dallas, okay? Mainly because CeeDee Lamb was out all preseason, all offseason. He was holding out. But, of course, we're projecting Brandon Cooks as the wide receiver 2, but Brandon Cooks has had no less than 82 concussions. He's getting older. Yeah, he's still good, but Jalen Tolbert was named the most improved player at camp. He is going to slot right into that Gallup role, and I know Gallup stunk last year, but Jalen Tolbert, he can elevate that role. I think at this point in his career, he's developing into a good downfield player. And, the Cowboys did see something in him. They took him in the 3rd round. He does have good speed. He hasn't truly flashed in a game, but all of a sudden, if he emerges as the wide receiver 2, he does take advantage of that Gallup role. Gallup was fantasy relevant here a couple of years ago. I want to look this up because Gallup was pretty good for the Cowboys. Not last year. I just want to make sure I got my numbers right. And I know if Fizz is in the chat, he's probably yelling at his computer right now saying, "Matty, you idiot. It was this year. But in 2019, so I was going to be way off. There was a role for Gallup on the Dallas Cowboys where he was the number 2. This is back when Amari Cooper was on the field, and it was a different situation, but 15.2 fantasy points, 6 touchdowns. Why can't that be a Jalen Tolbert at some point this year? Of course, CeeDee Lamb's that slot plus player. You can put him inside, outside. He could dominate all over. So, for me, he's just one of those. He's right there. He's right there. He's right there in front of us, and sometimes you kind of miss the forest behind the tree, right? Don't do that with Jalen Tolbert. He's a guy you can stash, put on your bench, and you can potentially use him later on in the season as a flex play if he's just getting those touchdowns. And then, of course, in your best ball, there's those that we do have seasonal best ball. It's not always dynasty best ball, but in your seasonal best ball, you definitely want to stash Jalen Tolbert because you don't have to do any of the work in terms of when to play, when not to play. And then again, I'm not even going to put the words, I'm not even going to utter the words, but you know what I'm about to say. If you're listening, something could happen on that team, the Dallas Cowboys, that could propel Jalen Tolbert into a role that's very fantasy friendly. I'm not going to talk about that situation. I'm not going to put it into God's green universe. Not going to do it one bit. But we all know things happen in football, so you want to be prepared. Jalen Tolbert is one of those guys that can help you be prepared in fantasy football. The next guy I'm going to talk about, I'm actually going to end this with 2 Denver Broncos. 3 Broncos made this list. I don't know what that – I was trying to think to myself earlier, like, what does that mean? Am I higher on the Broncos than I realize? And maybe I am. And maybe I'm actually just higher on Bo Nix and Sean Payton than I realized. But I'm going to talk about Greg Dulcich here. Greg Dulcich going into his 3rd year. Expectations are high for the 3rd-year tight end. He's had his issues staying on the field, but it seems like he has, made it through the offseason, the preseason, relatively healthy, and he's ready to kind of continue living that dream, be that tight end that Sean Payton can utilize in this offense. And when you look at who's catching the passes from Bo Nix, Courtland Sutton, he looks to be the number 1. After that, it's kind of foggy. It's kind of, I don't know. It's not really, it's tough to see, right? It's not going to be Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin's almost been left for dead already. Is it going to be Josh Reynolds? Maybe they let go of Tim Patrick. Could be Greg Dulcich. Greg Dulcich could slot right into that kind of second pass catcher role, be that, dynamic threat over the middle. And remember, Dulcich was kind of a darling coming out of UCLA. 6'4", 243, ran a 4.69, good speed, good burst, good agility. He was good in college. He was a 3rd-round pick. I know it wasn't this regime. It wasn't the Sean Payton regime, but he was a 3rd-round pick. The talent is there. The opportunity is there. And it seems like the health is there, which has been a big, big, big hurdle for Dulcich to climb. But a player that could break out in year 3, a player that could be absolutely valuable for us in fantasy games to start or at some point this year. So Sanders, Dulcich, 2 tight end stashes here that I think could bring you some numbers. We'll call it that. We'll bring you some numbers. The last guy we're talking about, his teammate, he was mentioned in the chat. So I wasn't ignoring you, Bronton. I wasn't ignoring you. I was just waiting. Devaughn Vele from Utah, undrafted rookie, Sean Payton, darling. He did the drumbeat on Devaughn Vele started in OTAs. It's not new. If you're a sicko for football and fantasy football, like we are over here at South Harmon, then you've heard the drumbeat. You've seen this guy's name. You've looked up this guy's name. We primarily do a lot of dynasty comment here at South Harmon FF. So in those formats, you were already picking up Devaughn Vele. But in the seasonal drafts, you don't have to draft him, but you bring him up. You stash him on your bench. If you're looking for a wide receiver stash, Devaughn Vele might be your guy. 6'4", 203 pounds, big body receiver. And again, I just talked about this in regards to Greg Dulcich. The hierarchy of this team in terms of how they're going to produce on the field is so murky. It's so hard to see it playing out and how it will play out. So Devaughn Vele all of a sudden becomes wide receiver 2. Devaughn Vele has a role. Devaughn Vele he pushed aside Tim Patrick, a guy who was playing well. Tim Patrick was playing well for the Broncos, and Vele pushed him aside. And, Josh Reynolds, I know they brought him in, but come on. We all know what Josh Reynolds is. Sean Payton knows what Josh Reynolds is. He's a good football player. But if Devaughn Vele can prove to be a more exciting playmaker, at 26 years old, he doesn't have a lot of time. He's going to have to do it. He's going to have to do it now. But that also means he's pretty polished. He's a mature wide receiver. And I got to be honest, through the process, I wasn't really aware of his skill set at Utah. I mean, he was there for 48 years, and he never had a season over 600 receiving yards, never eclipsed 5 touchdowns. But, last year they lost Cam Rising. There was issues to that offense. And now we're looking at reports that say stuff like this. Every time he makes a play, Sean Payton smiles. We're seeing reports that because he was so good, he's pushed aside Tim Patrick. We've continuously seen him make plays and kind of rise the depth chart. And Devaughn Vele could be that guy. And another factor here, I'm doling out cherries today, boys. Another cherry on top, Courtland Sutton being traded is such a realistic possibility. Regardless how the Broncos produce, we've seen Sean Payton stick to his game plan, pun very much intended. We've seen him, have those tractor beams really on his plan. He released Randy Gregory, didn't give a shit, let him go. He let go of, Russ, we owe Russ $200 billion. Cut his ass, I don't give a rip. He's stuck to his plan. So all of a sudden, the team could be doing pretty well. Courtland Sutton can be doing well. Steelers make a phone call. Bring, bring, bring. Someone else makes a phone call. The Chiefs, the Chargers. I don't know. Someone makes a phone call once, Courtland Sutton. Bing, bang, boom. He's shipped off. And now there's a vacuum left open. And Devaughn Vele might be the guy that takes some of those targets away. Devaughn Vele could be that guy that hits the scene in a big way. And it could start as early as week 1. It really can. He's the type he might be on the field for a handful of snaps, gets a couple targets, but one of them goes for a 32-yard touchdown. And all of a sudden we're going, oh, shoot, who's this Vele guy? And then the next week it gets a little bit more. And then he spikes again in week 4. And you're saying, so if I just stashed this guy, I wouldn't have had to use 30% of my fab. I wouldn't have to use my number 1 waiver priority on a wide receiver because you want to keep those for running backs, right? We do. Bing bong. We want to keep them for running backs. So this is the type of guy that we're trying to stash here. And James Young's in the chat. So you guys are targeting a 26-year rookie cap battle on a team that has a bottom 10 passive. Yeah, it's a stash, James. It's a stash. I'm not relying on this guy in fantasy. If you're relying on this guy in fantasy, you're not good. But what we're saying is you stashed this player. You put him on your bench because there is a path to him being productive. You want to shit on the passing attack for the Broncos. I'm not sitting here saying they're the Chiefs, but Bo Nix is going to bring an element of accuracy and anticipation that haven't seen since Peyton Manning. And last year, 10 receiving touchdowns for Courtland Sutton. He scored 12 fantasy points per game, James. If Devaughn Vele finds that role, you're going to want him. I don't give a shit about his age, about the battles in camp. At that point, he's going to be rostered. He's going to be used. And if you stash him, you clear all of the BS. You clear all of it. Now, again, you only have a couple stash spots on your roster. You're not of these 10 guys, you may only stash 1. And that's right. That's the right approach. But these are 10 options that you can absolutely stash. And you want another one. He was originally on the list. I took him off the list because of the Samaje Perine, but Carson Steele flashed in a big way. Carson Steele looked like an effective player for the Chiefs, and you want some shares of that. But with the Samaje Perine edition, it's just like, you know what? No. I'm good here. I put in Devaughn Vele for that measure. So that's it. Here we go, boys. It's draft day for me. I'm very, very excited. I will not be drafting any of these players, but I will be trying to stash some of these players after my draft. Dylan Laube, Andrei Iosvias, Drake Maye, Audric Estime, Roman Wilson, Eric Gray, Jatavian Sanders, Jalen Tolbert, Devaughn Vele, and Greg Dulcich. These are the 10 most important stashes as we head into the 2024 NFL season, into the 2024 fantasy football season. I want to give a big shout out to everyone in the chat. James, Roll FF, Fizzle, of course, Bronton, Dustin, Dynasty Barry, 7 Goat Rings, everybody else that's in the chat. Thank you so much for tuning in, tapping in. Make sure you are subscribed to the South Harmon FF YouTube channel. We are just getting started, everybody. We got a ton coming out. Shout out to you, Dynasty Rehab. Thank you for the kind words, giving me some confidence on my big day, draft day, because it's the most wonderful time of the motherfucking year. Went 35 minutes into my first F word, so I think I'm doing pretty good in that department. But anyway, let me get back to the task at hand. Make sure you're subscribed to the South Harmon Fantasy Football YouTube channel. We got content coming out for your asses on the daily streams, videos, all that good stuff here. Head over to southharmonff.com. Get the tools, get the warp tool. Join the Patreon, patreon.com/South Harmon. Get in the Discord. The Discord is bumping. I say this with bias. I get that. But I'm new to South Harmon. I've only been here now about a month, right? July 15th. So almost 2 months. I haven't been here for long, but I've known for a long time, that South Harmon has the best community in not just fantasy sports, but maybe all content. The chat, the Discord's always bumping, and then of course, we get to meet some of these guys. You know that they're as cool as they come across in text on the Discord. So make sure you join the Discord. Make sure you get the warp tool. Head over to South Harmon FF. Get all that good stuff. T-Rock's articles. I mean, we are cooking. And then of course, anywhere you get podcasts, make sure you subscribe to the South Harmon podcast channel. And you get great episodes. America's Game with Eric, Cooper Show, Grinding the Edge. We got All In with Matt and Pat. I was on there. It was 2 Matts and a Pat last week. That just sounds weird. I don't know why, but it's 2 Matts and a Pat. And then, of course, I got my battle called The Walkthrough. Will be debuting this week, where I go over the matchups, each matchup for the slate for the NFL. But we're cooking. We are absolutely cooking here at South Harmon. So head over to southharmonff.com today. Smash that like button. Leave a comment. We'll definitely get back to you because, like we said, we are the community. We are the fantasy platform for the bros. We are here to help you guys out, here to have some fun, more importantly. And everybody that's out there, if you haven't had your draft yet, good luck. Have fun. It's going to be a wild ride, and don't take it for granted because you only get one draft day a year. If you get old like me, you got kids, you're really only allowed to have one true draft day a year, and you got to have fun. Take advantage of it. Watch all this content so you can absolutely slap around your league mates, get that coin, get those trophies, and take down those championships. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Matty Kiwoom. This is the game plan, and I will see you next week. Peace.